It's time to start automating my life and my business so that I can focus on some of the more high value tasks or just get some time back to do some more fun stuff. I've started taking my learning journey down the agentic AI path. And I thought I'd share that with you and hopefully I can bring you along on the learning journey. I've started taking those steps by automating my productivity essentially. So I look after my task list for both work and business in Notion using a methodology called GTD, or Getting Things Done by David Allen. So let's dive over into Notion and I'll take you through how I sort of did it previously and where I've got to with the automation. Hopefully you can learn some stuff and automate some things in your own life. So here we are in Notion with a slightly doctored view of my GTD dashboard, if you will. This is not a Notion video, so I'm not going to go into huge detail, but essentially this is a database or a tasks table that's capturing all my tasks, and this is a filtered view of it so that I can actually capture tasks and see some of the important things. And I've filtered some of the stuff out here so you can only see what's relevant to the video, but in very broad strokes, I go through get messages on Teams or Slack or Zoom or whatever, or emails come in, or someone phones me, or I just have a thought, and I task capture things here. So I've got a new task to review security practices, let's say, and I fill in the details and I set a due date and so on, and I won't bore you with that. So I'm going to do that tomorrow, and I'm going to do that at a certain location. It's going to be home, and when it's all gets filled out, and ultimately once I've chosen a company, it'll drop down into either today's tasks or this week's task, or it'll slot in appropriately and filter up to the top of my task list, and it will also sync with my calendar. And that's the context of what I'm trying to automate, because what happens is this task capture actually takes longer than it seems, or sometimes I'm not at my computer and I'm too lazy to do it on my phone, or I just totally forget because I'm out and about. So with the automation that we're going to look at today, I can capture that via a WhatsApp bot, or in this case a Telegram bot, and that can be by voice or by text. So I'm just easing the way that I capture those tasks and make it automated. I can also update those tasks from that same place. So I just very quickly want to show you the workflow, if you will, actually in action, so you can understand what I want to show you, and then we'll talk through how to build it, or I'll try and take you through how to build it as best as possible. I'm just going to set this to inactive, and we'll hit that into test workflow mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the Telegram app on my phone. So you won't see this on the screen, but you'll see in the little camera version of me that I've got my phone, I've got the Telegram app. So if I'm going to record, say, I need to set up a task so that I remember to talk to Sam about security practices. So you can see this workflow is now running. It's transcribing my file, so I've got some text, and the AI agent is doing some stuff with access to my Notion database that I've told it to do. And essentially it's checking existing tasks. It's reasoning over what it needs to do with that task and deciding if it needs to update a task or create a task. And it's taking some information from the existing tasks, which hopefully informs it on how to create a new task. So if we jump back into Notion, I should have a new task here for Sam, and you can notice that it's actually associated that correctly with Sam Smiley, who pre-existed in my database, rather than just invent a new Sam. So I got that inference, which is awesome. So you can see sort of what I'm trying to do here. Let's jump into the actual practicalities of how to get this set up. Okay, so head over to N8N.io. N8N is a low-code tool, kind of like Make or Zapier, except it has a couple of key differences, and for our purposes, it's that it has an AI agent node right out of the box. So if you just click Get Started, you can fill in your form here and get started without your credit card details, and you're away laughing on a demo. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I think it's teaching you how to suck eggs to sign up a SaaS application. So let's just dive over onto N8N. There we go, where I've already logged in and I'm in a workflow. Once you've signed up, you're going to end up landing on this page. It'll have nothing in it, and you'll have projects and personal, and there'll be nothing in that. You can create a new project for what you want to work on, but in the trial, I think you can only create one project. So you could just get started in personal and hit create workflow. For this demo, I'm just going to jump into the Notion task capture that I've already created and we just looked at before, and hopefully I can step you through this without ballsing it up too much. Without further ado, I guess let's get into it. So I'm triggering my workflow, and every workflow must have a trigger based on a message from a messaging app called Telegram, which is, this could easily just be WhatsApp really, but for the purposes of this learning journey, I'm keeping it in Telegram to keep it separate from where the rest of my life sort of lives. Now what I'll do, I think, because I'll just actually I'll create a new trigger so we can have a look at that. So let's go. Hit the plus button in the top right and search for the application that you want, so for our case Telegram, and it will give us all the actions that are possible in Telegram. So I'm going to search for message, and what's quite nice is you can see that it separates out these things into actions that are possible, or actions and triggers. So in our case this is going to be a trigger, so we want to trigger our workflow on message, and I've got a couple of Telegram credentials already because I've been pissing about with it, but you need to create new credentials. So in the drop down, hit plus credential, and all you need is an access token. So to get an access token, jump over to Telegram, and hopefully I can get through this. I've been playing with it because it's a bit of a strange setup the first time you go through it, or first couple of times for me. So as I understand it, you hit new channel and you create a new channel. So I'm going to make this let's say Chris Turk AI. We'll go with that. I'm going to make it a private channel, and I'm going to hit save, and I won't invite anyone, so I'll skip that. And then I will do @botfather. And for me, I probably didn't really need to type that because this link here will literally just take me to this bot father that I've been to before. So I could just click on that, but you won't I don't think you'll have that in your one. So if you type @botfather and click on it, it'll take you to this handy bot creation wizard thing. If I press /, it'll bring up a bunch of commands, and I want new bot. So I could just type that. And then it's going to ask me some information about the bot. So it wants me to give the bot a name. So I'm going to say Chris AI Demo. I might say Chris Turk AI Demo. So it's a little bit more unlikely to conflict with things, because then it needs a username, and the username's got to be unique. So I'm going to have Chris Turk AI Demo. And hopefully I haven't actually used that already when I was messing about before. Oh, the username's already taken. So I think it was taken by me. So did I do Chris Turk AI? Oh, apologies. No, it's because it needs to have bot on the end of the name. Chris Turk AI bot. Let's have. Cool, okay, so now we have an access token here, and I can copy paste that and take it back to N8N. And just before I do that, I'm going to actually activate the bot. So that gives you this little link here that you can click on, and it will take you into the chat where the bot is going to be. We'll hit start, and I'll give it an initial message, test message. And the reason why I'm giving it an initial message is because I'm going to test the workflow with this bot. So we'll jump into N8N and it'll pick up that test message when we test the workflow. So if I jump back to N8N and paste in the access token, cool, and our connection's successful, so that's nice. It didn't make a total dick of me. And I'll close out of that, and it's dumped it in a stupid place on my canvas, so it's here, and I'm going to link that up with my workflow and go into test workflow, and it should pick up that message that's waiting, but if not, I'm going to send it a message in the bot. Okay, it doesn't seem to pick it up, so I'm just going to dive over back to Telegram off screen here and send it another test message. Okay, cool. So we can see that that's working now. So the next thing to do is to step through the rest of the process. Okay, cool. So let's see if we can get this thing hooked up with an AI agent and see if we can get a message coming back to Telegram. So I'm just going to hit the plus here up in the top right, and I'm going to search for AI agent. And this is really the magic of N8N, is having this AI agent sort of pre-made for you to be able to use tools and such without too much hassle. So this isn't wired up to anything, so I'm not going to be able to do much with that. So let's connect this to our previous bot that we just created before, and I'll bring that up there, and we'll click into AI agent, and cool. Okay, so it's bringing some test data across. Now the input message that I'm going to send to the model that I've connected is not going to be the chat trigger node. That is a totally different node, so I'm going to define that below, and I'm going to drag and drop this text that I'm getting from my Telegram trigger, and you can see it's giving me a result test data, and let's just test that step, and we can see that I've got an error. Okay, what's that error? So let's go back to here. You can see the tiny little asterisk down here by chat model, which sort of indicates that it's compulsory, and I'm going to go to an OpenAI model. So I've already got my OpenAI connected here. What you'll probably have is create new credential, and you'll need to get an API key. Now there's so much information and documentation about how to get an API key from OpenAI. The summary is basically go to the platform API for OpenAI, top up your account, and create an API key. So if you just put a little bit of credit on there and copy the API key across there, you'll be away and laughing. For my purposes, I'm just going to use the one that I've already got connected, and I'm going to use GPT-4 Turbo to keep costs down here. So search for Turbo, so I'm going to use that model, and if I jump back into here and test that step, cool, we can see that there would actually be an output, but I haven't connected it to anything. So what I can do then is I can create another Telegram action, send a message. If I just search for message, and there is send text message, and the message that I want to send to the same chat that we began from. So if I hit the drop down here and go back to the Telegram trigger and grab the chat ID, that's where I want to send the message to, and the text I want to send it, if I hit the drop down here, is going to come from the agent, and it's going to be the output from the agent. So if I then hit test on that step, I should be able to jump back over to my Telegram. So let's do that. And you can see in my Telegram that it sent us a handy message back. Okay, so let's jump back into N8N and we'll save that. I recommend saving stuff often. It's not like an auto save here. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some memory. So if I sent something to my chat and then something else to my chat without memory, it's going to forget about the first message. So the easiest thing to do here is just use this built-in function with N8N Windows buffer memory, and you can just essentially choose how many messages it's going to remember. So 5 is going to be just fine for this demo. The more that you add here, the more tokens it's going to use. So there's a balance to be had with remembering a lot of stuff and consuming lots of tokens. Cool, okay, so we've got the memory and we've got a message coming back. The next thing to do is to add voice. So if I just bring that out here, what I might do is test the workflow, and I'll send it a voice command, and you'll see that it probably errors out here. So voice test. Cool. Okay, so we got an error, which is what I was expecting. And the reason for this error is because we're expecting in our input here json.message.text, and of course from our Telegram trigger we're not getting any json.message.text, but we are getting a file. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to create this switch, and this is going to allow me to create some branching for if I get a voice file or a text message input. So let's have a switch. And we're going to have a couple of rules here. So the first rule is going to be I'm going to just overwrite the name so I know what I'm doing. And the second rule is going to be for voice. And I've got no previous data, can't test the step. So what I think I'll do is, well, first thing to do is to move it into the right location. So I'm going to connect up my trigger here, and I'm just going to disable this so that I'm able to test without that interfering. So we do have some data from the previous voice message that I just left. So what I'm going to do is drag this file ID here into this value 1. And if a file ID exists, because voice files come as files, I'm going to say that that's going to exist. If I test that step, then sure enough, it's been sent down the voice branch. And you can see that when I go back to the canvas, that I've dragged it into the wrong thing, I think. Don't know why I called that test. That should be text. Let's clear that data. We'll send the workflow another message. This time I'll send it just off screen here via typing. So I'll send it a test message. Cool. The reason why I went down the text branch before is because I didn't put any conditions into the text branch. So if I now drag this text up here to the top one, if it wants to drop in, there we go. And I'll set this also to string and exists. And if I hit test on this step, this voice should change to text, I think. So it's made a liar out of me, but let's go back to the canvas. Cool. Okay, so that looks like it's going down the voice branch. I'll need to retest the voice branch. But if I reconnect this test up here with my bot and reactivate the bot here and reactivate that, then I should be able to test that workflow. Sent it a test message. Okay, and we've got an error there. Let's have a look at why. It went down the right branch. Okay, so I figured out why that error was happening. It's just basically because this Windows buffer memory, before we were testing the workflow without me having added to it, and the reason is it was set to connected chat trigger node by default, so I need to update that to take the input from the message.text. So if I define that below, I think I'm going to need to test the workflow again. So if I give it some input, let it run, it's basically this. I need to send it this json.message.text. So if I chuck that into here, define below and chuck it into here as an expression. Cool, then we should be able to test that workflow again. So I'm just going to send it a test. Cool, and you can see if I jump back over to Telegram, you'll see that test message I just sent, it actually responded to. Great, hello, how can I assist you today? And if I look at my N8N run, I'll see that this output here, somewhere in here, there'll be hello, how can I assist you today? Will be the text output. There we go, and that's what it sent to me. So cool, that's working. But now how do we handle voice? So let's try and get that set up. So I want to create an action here for the voice, and Telegram has an existing action which is called download, I think. File, get file. Okay, so I'm going to leave those same credentials connected to that same bot. So I want it to do a get, and I don't have the expression for file ID because I actually need to send it some data. So if I send it some more test data, an actual file, testing file, and I'll need to test my workflow and have it go down that branch. That's not right. I've got an error with this node, so it's not running because I've not configured it properly. So what I can do is I can just deactivate that. At least I think I can. So testing file. Okay, let me send the trigger again. Testing voice trigger. Okay, there we go. So it sent it down that branch. Let's activate that and I'll hopefully pick up the data. And the file ID is this one here. So I want to drop that in there. And that should be all I need to do with that. And then you'd think that I could probably just hook that up. Sorry, there's one more step. So I want to transcribe this. So I can add a node and just hit transcribe. And OpenAI has an action for transcribe. So transcribe a recording. Nearly picked translate there, so make sure you pick the right one. So I've got the file here from the previous file, and I don't think there's actually anything I need to do with that. So let's just test that step and see if sure enough, it's transcribed it to testing voice trigger. So that's what I want. That's great. And you'd think that at this point that I can just hook that back up to the agent and we're all good to go. But the problem here is that the output of the dot notation, if you will, of the output here is different from the output from this text trigger, which is where this edit fields come in. And I'm hoping I can show you the difference here. So I've got json.message.text here, which is the output of the text switch. And what I'll do is I'll just test the workflow again. testing workflow. Okay, so the transcription went into the AI agent, but the AI agent had a problem. So what I want to do is take the input from the OpenAI node, which is the transcription node. I should change it. And you can see here that the output is now just JSON.txt. So I can change either one to match, but it's just so long as they match. So if I then now do the same on the Windows memory buffer, in fact, I can just copy it from here to my Windows memory buffer and make sure that's also using windows.json.txt and test that step. It works without an issue, I think. So problem is now though, I've broken the top branch. So I need to add an edit fields in. So what I'm going to do is, to make life simple, I'm just going to copy this add edits field, copy that one, and I'll wire it up here. And what this is basically doing is it's taking the input of json.message.txt and mapping it just to text, which is actually json.txt on the next variable. So now I've wired that up. If I test that workflow, I should be able to send it a text message. So I'm going to test my text message, ignore the typos when they come through, but that looks like it's all worked. And I'm also going to test my workflow with a voice message, see if it goes through the other branch, test voice message, and you can see it going through the other branch. And if I jump back over to Telegram here, you'll see that it's responded to my test text message that I typed, and it's responded to my voice message just there. So the architecture here, or this flow that I've created down the bottom, will become the base for a lot of bots, whether it be with Telegram or otherwise. Okay, so we're at the fun part where we actually get to give our agent access to something so that it can do something, and in our case that's going to be Notion. Now I think I'm just going to disable this workflow that I've been working on, and we'll go over the full workflow that I've already got working, because it's going to be easier to show you in the nodes I've already created. But I did also want to go over how to get Notion connected in the first place, so I'll quickly show that. If we were going to add a new tool here, and I'll go to Notion and consume the Notion API. Now I've already got a couple of Notion credentials here, so I'm gonna just go through it as if I didn't. So I'll create a new credential, and we need some kind of secret here. Now I couldn't actually find how to do this in the desktop application, so what I did is I did it in the web app. So if we jump over to Chrome here and have a look at the web app, and you can see I've actually left this open. If I jump into integrations, and I've got a couple here, you'll need to create a new integration. I'm just going to call this integration, let's call it test 3. I'm going to give it access to a particular workspace and leave it as internal, and I'll hit save, and that's been configured, and that's basically what I need, is this key here. So just show that, doesn't really matter because I'm going to delete all those tests before this video goes out, and I'll give it some more permission, and I'll hit save. And that doesn't actually give that integration access to any pages, it's just really creating the integration. So if I then jump over to Notion itself, and I'll show you where that gets created. So in Notion, if I'm got a database view and I go to the ellipsis in the top right here, and you can see these connections that have access to my page down the bottom. And if I scroll through the available connections and integrations, you'll see test 3. So I can choose test 3 and give that access to this page. I'm not going to bother with that because I'm just planning to delete that integration. But if we jump back to N8N and paste in the key that we got there and hit save, good, that worked. It didn't make me look like an idiot. Okay, so then we'd be good to go, and we'd be able to go through and configure this. And I'll quickly show you, I guess, step through configuring a blank node so you can see, you know, where I've derived the information from. We're going to be primarily working with database pages, so you choose here what this is going to access, and it's really quite granular. I can make it update or create or delete pages, or I can give it access to only one single column in a database, and that would be a tool unto itself, and I can create a separate tool for something else very granular. But for my example, you know, I've done get many, and what I really wanted to show you is, so I can select a database from the list, and of course I need to change my credentials because that credential didn't actually get given access. So I choose my database from the list and set some details, so I can return say 15 results instead of 50 to save on some tokens, and then I can start to build out a filter. So let's build out the filter. In my case, I'm going to return things based on time and status. So let's jump over to that now. The other one thing I did want to show here is, let's say instead of getting database pages, we're going to create a page, and for that page it needs a title, and instead of just typing in some sort of static title here, what we can do is use an expression. Of course, with workflow tools you can use an expression, but where the magic really is with this agent is I don't really have to know any fancy syntax. So I can just copy this from AI JavaScript placeholder thing and dump it in there, and you'll see this pattern all throughout the next node. This is why I wanted to show you it. So placeholder name is not really very descriptive, so I'm going to say that this is the title and just give it a comma separation there, and another set of, oh, I put that in the wrong place, and another set of quotes, and just explain what this is. So this is going to be title for task, and you'll see this pattern of like I've given a variable name and just a little description of that variable, but ultimately everything's getting derived from the AI agent, and that's where the magic is really. So I just come out of here and I'm going to delete that. And the other thing I should show that I haven't pointed out with all these things, I didn't rename the nodes. You can just highlight a node and press F2 and I'd rename that and say that that is create page, and so I know what tools I've actually given it. So let's delete that for now. Now the other thing I should show you is the AI agent itself. I've given it system instructions. So if I go to the node down the bottom here, you can see that it's not got any system instructions. So if I add an option and go system message, this is where I'll put the system instructions. So I'll come out of there, go back to this one, and I'll probably share the system instructions in my show notes or some link or some such. There's a little thing in the bottom right hand corner that can make this full screen so it's easier to see. This is the instructions itself, and this is the instructions once it's interpreted any JavaScript variables that I've dropped in here. So I'm telling it what day it is because the model always gets the date wrong. And there's some other stuff that I wanted to call out. So the agent is not a genius in terms of its IQ. So even though I've told it that it needs to use the get tasks tool first to validate the inputs, I still have had to specify that this status field in my database is case sensitive and it must be, I don't know why I stupidly didn't have a capital S when I created this. It seems to get that wrong some of the time unless I specify it. So the system instructions is going to be a bit of a trial and error, so heads up about that. The more specific you are, the better. The other thing I played with was having system instructions in XML, and I've seen a bit of debate about whether that's better or not, and then, to be honest, in my experience with this particular workflow, the XML just got in the way. So now that that's all been explained, let's just jump through each one of these tasks. So I've told my AI agent that it should always be getting tasks. Even when it's creating new tasks, I still want it to look at existing tasks for how I've formatted things, and that's pretty simple here. So I have filled this resource in as database pages. I want to get many from this database, as we kind of looked at before. I want to return a limit, and I think this all should be self-explanatory. And then I've added a filter. I wanted to build my filter out manually because that means I'm doing it all in the GUI rather than pasting in a JSON. And then I've been able to pick my property fields down here. So in my case, I'm picking due date, and I've got a little bit of JavaScript dropped in here so that it returns a due date and an ISO string based on 7 days ago and everything newer than that. So basically my tasks that are a week overdue and everything that's due in the future is going to get returned. I think that's quite straightforward. We're just getting tasks. Then the agent's going to decide whether it needs to create a task or update an existing task. And if it decides to create a task, then again, I've got this description set manually. So I'm explaining to the agent here what this tool is for. So it's for creating pages, and sure, I won't bore you with the verbosity of what I've actually written. And then in terms of resource, I'm creating a database page. So the operation is create in the same dashboard. And this is where you used to start to see, this is quite repetitive, so I won't try and go through every key, but the things that I want to edit. So title is compulsory. And in here I have, like I sort of did in the last example, I've copied that into this area. So it's from AI. So I'm not understanding any complex syntax here. I'm just dropping it in and editing the actual name of the variable. So that's the title, and just a little description about what it's about, and that repeats for everything that I want it to fill in. So in my database, I've decided, based on my filtering and such that I've got in Notion, I've decided that I want it to assign it to a person. So I've chosen that key. I want to set a due date, or I want to allow it to set a due date, so I've chosen that. And all the way along, again, I've just got, this is the magic here, this variable from AI, and I've given it a name of due date and the date that it's expected to be actioned. So a little description. So I don't want to go over that again and again and again, but essentially I'm doing that again and again and again for all those tasks. And then finally, I've got the exact same thing for update tasks. In fact, I actually copy and pasted. It's quite cool in here to duplicate a thing. I can literally hit Control D, I think, and it will just duplicate that for me. So I had create task, and I just duplicated that to update task and edited a couple of fields that I wanted update to be allowed access to a couple more columns. And here's another thing that I can just call out while I'm in here, you might find in your development experiences. Because I am accessing this database page for update based on an expression, the other thing I didn't point out is these things are changed here by fixed and expression. So because I'm changing it there, it's not able to load this information. So what I can do is I can just paste in the ID of a database page. So I've got one, I think that's one there, a database page. And then I can come into these little dots here and refresh the list, and you'll see it's now got status, and the rest of them haven't been updated. So to speed things along, I can actually just come out of that node and go back into that node, and now you can see all of them, so it's working. So I can then edit and add in my from AI, okay, that's task status. It's a little bit easier to work with, and when I'm done with that, I can change this back to expression, and hopefully I've stored my expression somewhere. I think it was from AI ID, yeah, so that's the one. And that should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to test that workflow and jump over to Telegram. And I'm going to go to my Notion task bot and I'm going to say create a task to go to the pub with Sappho. And if I jump back into N8N, I can see that task's running. Hopefully when I was playing with all these tasks I didn't break anything. Cool, and that looks like it's all worked successfully. So I'm going to make that task active now so I no longer have to test workflow when I want it to run. And if I jump over then to my Notion, I'll just jump back to my normal view. So I should be able to see it in the task capture with no company essentially. So I've got a task here for go to the pub with Sappho. It's due today, which is the default setting. It's at the pub. It's with Sappho, it's assigned to me, and when I assign a company to this, it will drop out of the capture area and into the due date. I know that was a long video, thanks so much for sticking with me. Look, I hope that helps you on your journey to automating things, and I hope that opens your eyes a little bit to something that's maybe possible in the real world. This has already started saving me time, and it stopped me from being lazy and not actually capturing tasks. Until the next one, have a good one.